Hello.
Hello. Wonderful.
Okay. Do I have sharing capability? Okay. Okay, thanks. You got it.
(5:30), we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Cassidy, if you will do roll call for us.
Yes. Allison Pitt. Here. William Beck.
Here.
Carly Sherrill.
Here.
Shelby Poole.
Here.
Lee Lautenbach.
Here.
Joe Valentine.
Here.
Maddie Knudsen.
Here.
Ashley Cass.
Here.
And Carly, you are the winner of tonight's mission and vision.
The mission of WLA is to utilize leadership-based programs and strategies grounded in solid research, combined with the demonstrated success of core knowledge curriculum as a basis of a rigorous overall educational program that builds strong skills in math, reading, literature, writing, music, science, and technology. The vision of WLA is to be a school where students and graduates become exceptional leaders and are prepared to take on the academic and leadership challenges they will face in high school and beyond.
All right. Approval of the agenda. Any items wanting to be removed from the consent agenda, we would need to discuss now. Is there anything that anyone had any issues with on the consent agenda? All right. I would make a motion to approve the November board meeting agenda.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further conversation? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Any conflicts of interest to declare this evening? There's nobody here to speak. All right. You don't count as a public comment. Sorry, okay. All right. We are ready for Bonnie.
Justin just stepped out, but I can't get my
Of
tab to
course.
go over, of course.
Great. Wonderful. Is it okay if I go ahead and share my screen?
Yeah, you can go ahead. I'll work on getting it viewable for them.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. You let me know when everyone can see that, and then when you can see it, if you let me know if you see the screen that says Woodbury Leadership Academy. I've been sharing the wrong screen all day. So.
Okay. I think we all have a digital version, so while I'm having technical issues, you can go ahead and start. We can see I can see your screen.
All right, that sounds good. I'll start on page 3 of the presentation where it says audit results on top, and I'll talk a little bit about our audit opinion and the different reports that we provide within the financial statements. Right now in your packet, you have a draft of the audit report. We'll go ahead and get things finalized here after the meeting with no changes expected. The auditor's opinion letter, which is required by state statute, and also required by our bondholders, and just a really good idea to have that independent auditor's review, does provide an unmodified opinion. And essentially what that means is it was a clean audit. We were able to obtain all of our audit evidence. We did not run into any significant issues, and everyone at the school really was so helpful in getting us what we needed, answering our questions, and making sure that everything was in order. So no issues during the audit, good here. We also review internal controls during our audit, make sure that all of your processes and procedures are working the way that they should be. And we didn't find any issues there. So with some of the accounting staff that you work with, and then also within the school, we found that the proper approvals were being done, the procedures were being followed. And then we also review compliance with Minnesota state statutes. And so as a charter school, you're a governmental entity, so you have to comply with a lot of different state statutes. And we didn't find any issues there. So we look at different things around how you pay your bills, run your board meetings, and have your procurement procedures, things like that. And again, no issues that we found. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the financial trends during the audit. It's one of the things we do is we look at how do things compare to last year. Charts that summarize the financial statement. And then also show that comparison to where you have been historically, daily membership. So some of the things we look at are our per student numbers, and so this kind of helps frame up some of those comparisons. So you did increase from about 730 students last year to 870 students for fiscal year 25. And then next is your general fund balances. So thinking about what do you have in your reserves to cover your operating costs. The school does have a policy of 20% to maintain 20% fund balance. And for fiscal year 25, you were at about 27.2%. So right in line with that policy and very consistent with where you've been the last couple of years. So in fiscal year 24, you were at 26% fund balance. So really consistent fund balance. So great to not see a lot of big swings in that, able to maintain that really steady fund balance and consistent with your policy. And then next is a look at your budget to actual. So every year, or multiple times a year, you go through and review your budget and see where you think you'll end up for the year and plan accordingly. And we show in the audit report how you comply with that budget. And for revenues, you were about $120,000 over what you had expected. And then your expenses were a little bit over as well, about $42,000 over. But overall, very consistent with your budget expectations. You did transfer out a little bit to support other operations. About $70,000 went out of the general fund to support some of those other needs. So overall, increasing fund balance of about $480,000, where you had planned for about a $330,000 increase. And then next is a look at your general fund revenues per student. So again, keep in mind that that large increase in that per student number. Also, there was just a large increase in the amount of revenues that were brought in per from state aid. So your state aid revenues went up about from 11,000 per student to about 14,000 per student. And so you can see there that changed. I noticed one error on this chart as I was preparing for the meeting and reviewing it. We have the statewide average listed on slide 7 of our presentation. That should say 2024 statewide average. I apologize. It's not the 23 statewide average, it's the 24 statewide average. We grabbed all of the charter school specific data from the Minnesota Department of Education. They have all the revenue numbers per student, and so we have that comparison there, so you can see what is the statewide average for state, federal, local sources, and then also Region 11. Region 11 is the 7-county metro area, and so we have that average there as well for schools that are within the metro. And again, this is just charter school data, so you can see how you compare both to last year and then also to those other charter schools. And then I'm going to show you a couple different slides that break apart your general fund. So this first one is really interesting because it shows you what I'm sure you already know, where your largest source of your budget is within salaries and wages. And then it also shows you how much of our budget is comprised of employee benefits versus purchase services, and then also supplies. Purchase services includes transportation costs or other outside services that you might have, like your audit fees and accounting fees, legal services, things like that. And I like this chart because it shows you, although your budget might grow, the percentage that you're spending on these different areas remains relatively consistent year over year. And then another look at your general fund spending, and this time I'm looking at that on a per student basis. So where do you fall compared to other charter schools and also historically? And this chart breaks apart all of the charter schools in the state and maps them out in different percentile ranges. And so you can see where your per student spending for the general fund has been. And I always like to look at this chart and then draw you back to the revenue per student chart. So you can see, okay, we might be on that lower end of spending, we're also on that lower end of revenues per student as well. And then separate from the general fund operations, quick slide on the building company. And this one is really just focusing on what is the level of debt that we have for the next few years here. So just looking at the principal and interest requirements and how much do we have in reserves from the bond covenants and different operating reserves right now. So you can see what that reserve balance is, and then also that the debt requirements are fairly consistent over the next few years. And then here's a look at your general fund balances compared to those other charter school groups. And this one is thinking about, okay, how do our reserves really compare both historically, as you saw before, and then to these other groups, Region 11 and the statewide average, and fairly comparable to those other charter schools. And then just a couple of charts that break apart the general fund funding into some of your larger programs. And so thinking about the elementary education program where most of your teacher wages live, and how does that compare to other charter schools just for that specific program cost. So you can see there what that is per student. And then we also have one for special education expenditures. We see this as a growing program for a lot of schools that we work with. So we like to break it out so you can see what those costs are spread out over all of the students at the school compared to other charter schools. And then here is our your audit team, and so it's myself, Kelsey, and Kaylee working on your audit this year. And I would love to go back if you have any questions. We can touch on anything if you want me to go into more detail and leave the financial reports. I would love to do that as well. I'll open it back up to the group.
So you're looking for any questions they might have before they approve the audit, correct?
Are you looking for questions right now, before we approve the audit?
Yes, if there are any.
Questions?
And she's not gonna go through each of the documents, she was just doing the presentation about them, so hopefully you looked at them and are ready to approve.
It doesn't look like there's any questions.
All right.
Great job.
That sounds great. Well, I'll jump out, let you guys get back to your meeting. If anything comes up, please feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Thank you,
All
Bonnie.
right, thank you. Bye.
We got it.
Computer
It's
froze.
not on here to approve. Do you need to approve?
Okay, hold on, my computer froze. Jason, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry, my computer froze, so you're just frozen. But we are ready for you when you're ready.
Great. All right. Let me. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Your logo and everything?
Yes.
Beautiful. All right, you all received the feasibility study results. So I'm not going to go over that. We can talk about that, questions and everything afterwards. Instead, I've got a couple slides showing what the next steps are. And there's really three options. There's go ahead with the campaign. There's move to creating a development plan and fundraising plan. Development is just a fancy word for 6 months. Doing a development plan, figuring out, creating that structure, and building annual giving and fundraising, which could then, in 2 or 3 years, lead to a campaign. And then the third thing is do nothing and keep waiting. So that's it. We won't go over all this. But if you want to do a full, comprehensive campaign, we're not calling it a capital campaign, because you're not building a building, figure it's probably through about a 4-year plan. And the most important part is the infrastructure, the staffing, and the alignment. Meaning, nothing works if you don't have the people and the time to do it. We can come up with the best materials, the best reason, the best anything. But if the people aren't out there making the calls and the people aren't out there building the relationships and making the asks and doing follow-up, it doesn't happen. Right? It's defining the vision and the goals, which I think we've done a good job with the draft case statement and the feasibility study. It's coming up with that. It's then starting to find the people. Identifying the leaders. It's not just members of WLA, right? We need some community people who believe in the vision also. And it's recruiting them and getting them and putting this together. It's building the brand out more. It's coming up with internal reporting. It's doing small cultivation events. To get to this point, it might be 6 months before we're ready to do this. Then it's the buy phase, where you're trying to raise 60 to 70% of the money before you go public. Sometimes it's 80%. And that's, excuse me, it might take 7 or 8 meetings before you make an ask of someone. When we're talking about the buy phase, we're looking at major groups. $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 gifts to be paid out over 2 to 3 to 4 years. It's not a one-time check. We say we want $500,000 over 3 years. Then you go to the public piece, which we would probably do earlier in your case because there's such a public thing. That's the $100. Get the community involved, small donors. And then it's stewardship and reminding these people what their money is doing. If you want to build a development plan, you need someone internally that's focused on fundraising or development. Doesn't need to be full-time. Doesn't need to be a person that's their only job, but somebody has to do it. They have to be responsible for the follow-up, as Jonas is going on this call, that we sent out these 10 letters, or we're doing our annual appeal letter. You need a way to track these. A CRM. And there's really cheap ones. You don't need some fancy one. You have to have a gift processing and acknowledgement systems. You have to have all of that in place before you start, because the worst thing you can do is start getting gifts from people, but then not follow up. You need to clarify the message, because you've got great materials, but those materials are focused on getting families and students, not fundraising, and not fundraising for people whose children or grandchildren don't go to WLO. So we would need to build up some of that. Take our annual fund or annual campaign appeal, get a recurring giving program going, and then you focus on, you find foundations, individuals, corporations that can be larger, but again, those often take time to build up. And then you just keep building it, you strengthen it. You keep the events you're doing, but we look at building those more cultivation, not just thank you for their gift. And we really capture the data and we start looking at who might be interested in giving more, and Jonas starts meeting with them. In either plan, there has to be 100% board giving. Any amount, whatever is meaningful. But it's sort of a key. And then we need community connectors, where we talk about people who aren't part of every school, and then we build it. I don't need to read this to you, you can all read it. And that's it.
How is it different from the option 2?
So the difference is, hold on, now my computer is option 1 is a campaign is a dream with a deadline. We want to raise $5 million over the next 4 years. And we are going to have a campaign committee, and then we're going to have a community committee, and there's going to be certain people that are focused on the $50,000 gifts and generating those leads, and we're asking them for a one-time gift for this campaign. And running a campaign all in might cost you 10%. And that's hiring a staff person, internal staff person, that's hiring a consultant, that's materials, that's videos, that's events. So if you're gonna do a $5 million campaign, you actually do a $5.5 million campaign. And you build that $500,000 of expenses into the campaign. So you're raising the money to do it. If you're building a development plan, an annual giving plan, then you're looking to bring in, the first year might be $100,000, the second year might be $300,000. By year 4 or 5, you could hopefully be at close to $1 million. And those are annual gifts. Those are, you're going back to those people every 1 to 2 to 3 years, building up the relationships of doing that. It's not, and then in year 3 or 4, if you build up a good group of donors, you've got a few hundred donors, then you could launch a campaign and you've got this basis of donors. And I'm not saying one or the other, but that's the main difference.
What are the differences in terms of, going one direction or the other, in terms of what we might ideally hire as additional staff and or time commitment that would be necessary for me to be successful with it between the two?
Sure.
How's it different?
In a campaign, it's go, because you use the momentum of the feasibility study to be pretty aggressive and moving out. And in a campaign, the executive director, leader, person, generally at least 50% of their time is a campaign. Now that doesn't mean, it might mean that, Tuesdays and Thursdays until noon, you're working on the campaign. All right, that's spread out. Or this week, we've got you going to 10 different meetings. Next week, we don't have you going to any. So Whereas in an annual, it's probably, in most not-for-profits, the executive director, especially if you do not have a vice president of development, the executive director is probably spending 20% of their time fundraising. And the fundraising isn't just fundraising, that also includes stewardship and thanking people for their gifts and going to the Knights of Columbus thing or doing this or doing that, right? It includes that. For hiring, you really want somebody, whether that's a contract person, a temporary person, or somebody there in a campaign who, at a certain point, at least 50% of the time, they're focused on the campaign. They're focused on getting letters out, they're focused on getting calls out, they're focused on setting up the next tour, they're focused on making sure that your campaign committee has all the information they need. You know, it's hey Julie, remember your meeting with Stephanie tomorrow, here's the packet, what you're going to be talking to her about. It's that kind of thing.
I imagine that, as I'm thinking about that, is that person doing a lot of the setting up the meetings for me? Like, what are the, or am I doing that? Like, I'm just wondering about the qualifications and somebody who's going to go and try and set up a meeting with me at a big company or organization, or if it's not me doing the call to set up the meeting, like what skills, and I mean, are we looking at an administrative assistant, or are we looking at somebody with a greater level of expertise in that?
So, it's a good question. You could go one route and hire somebody that has development, you know, work at a not-for-profit in a fundraising shop. And they could talk to certain people, they could schedule the meetings with you, they could do that. However, like it or not, the CEO of Ecolab is not going to talk to your executive assistant. The CEO of Ecolab is talking to you. It's peer-to-peer in cases like that. So, but they can schedule, they could sit in your office and say, we're going to call these 4 people now. And they could have your calendar in front of you, and then, you know, the meeting could end with you saying, great, I'm going to have Bob reach out to you and let's get it on the schedule. You know, so an EA could do it, but then it puts more of the onus on you
Yeah.
to do the fundraising.
Got it. All right. So I want to focus in because there's a lot of information and I want to move it forward here. So just a couple things. And of course, if anybody else has questions, please pipe in here. But one, I know you said you're not making a recommendation, but based on your experience and knowledge and doing this, which direction, if we had a hold you to saying, what do you really think we should do? What would you say?
I would say you probably, because you don't have the infrastructure to do a campaign, I would lean towards setting up a development and over the next, and maybe you do it as a year. And what I would probably do is do the development plan and fundraising plan, and the one I laid out I think is pretty good for you, with the additional piece of trying to look for a lead gift. And that's if you do a campaign, right? You always want to try to lead gift right away. To try and find a lead gift right away to fund the expenses for the development. A lot of times in a campaign, when you go to a medium-sized or smaller, what you try and do is get the board to fund the initial expenses, right? That's not always feasible. But in a case like this, you could go to if you saw our feasibility study reports, there were several family members that were six-figure donors. And, you
Understood.
know,
Okay, so let me just, a few more things. One,
Yeah.
if we're doing it, if we're even, either way, if a significant chunk of my time is needed, I don't have it till July 1st. We can set up our plan for next year, you know, July 1st, when New Year starts, and our budget and the way we set things up. So, in terms of a real launch of what we're gonna do, are we gonna lose momentum from the feasibility study? If we, I mean, maybe we're trying to, between now and the end of this year, you know, find those lead gifts and start to look for a staff person to potentially hire. But are we gonna lose the momentum we need besides trying to find a lead gift or two and trying to hire to have someone to start in maybe July? Is that timing gonna be problematic with when we did these interviews and the feasibility study and the momentum we're trying to build?
So if you could find the time to reach out to the select people that participated in the feasibility study and say to them, I'd love to have coffee with you to share the results. And, you know, dedicate a half an hour to an hour. And so maybe that's, we could probably narrow it down to 10 people.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, then you don't lose the momentum from that. And then, whether you go to a campaign or you go to building a development plan, you've now got 2 interactions with those people, you've got their buy-in,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think that, to me, that would be the way to go. If you can dedicate yourself to
Okay.
that.
Board members, what questions do you have for Jason?
I guess looking at the feasibility study, I didn't actually see any positive, like, these people were all in. When I looked at it, I didn't necessarily see that, like, a ton of people were committed to giving bigger amounts. So I don't know if I was reading something different or didn't read it correctly.
Okay, no, that's a fair question. The number of people that believed in your mission and vision and believed in the campaign was overwhelming. The number of people that had high capacity gifts that they were willing to make is not huge.
Right.
You would not be able to, I'll put it this way, if everybody whose child goes to school there made if you had 100% participation from the families, not including grandparents, and they gave at 20% of their capacity, their giving capacity. If everybody did that, which isn't going to happen, you'd probably get $3 million in a campaign.
And I guess I would say
Now that
that,
doesn't make, yes, go ahead.
I guess I would say the parents that are choosing to send their kids here aren't choosing to send their kids to a school where they have to pay.
Well, there were more than 2 participants that said, we could have sent our child to a private school. Instead, we chose WLA. But if we're sending our kids to the same academy, we'd be paying $30,000 a year. So we think it is absolutely fair to do 10 to 15,000 per kid per year. We had multiple families said that.
Well, and Jason, when you and I have talked, and when we talked with a little bit more in the group, part of our discussion has been, one of our learnings is that we think the place where we may have our most capacity to really raise significant funds is through foundations, and maybe particularly national foundations, which the feasibility study,
Yes.
you know, really not able to do these interviews with those foundations at that level, they're just not gonna do them. So there's a lot of unknowns
Exactly,
there.
that's exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah. We think that doing an annual campaign and building that up, we could definitely get in money from local, regional, and national foundations. Go back to what your auditor showed. Look at, there's schools that are getting in, $900 plus per student. In other, there's charter schools in this town that have development staffs, have a director of development and an associate director, and are bringing in millions of dollars a year from foundations and corporations. And none of them on your side of the river right now, so.
And you also talked about that our data may play particularly well with some of the national foundations in a way that maybe doesn't as much locally because of perception of Woodbury as being financially not in need as much.
You're exactly right. Yeah, I was able to casually interview several of the foundations in town, and you said it better. It's, well, Woodbury, no, Woodbury's doing fine, they don't need us. We'll stick with Phillips neighborhood in North Minneapolis. Whereas the regional and the federal, when you show them, we're not figuring out how to close the gap. We have figured out how to close the gap. We should be the model that you use around the country. Invest in us and learn and partner with us.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, Jason, as a task of the board, what I would suggest is that at our next, we have time to digest this, and we consider choosing a path at our next meeting in December, right? And so that gives time to ask questions and think about it over the next month. Does that seem like a reasonable piece?
Yeah, and really what you want to decide, there's a million pieces within this. If you're gonna do a campaign, you do the campaign, and that's all in, and that's a lot of money, and it's a lot of work, and can be huge benefit. And as a result of the campaign, by the way, you also build up an annual fund. Because you're meeting with these people and you're building this up. But it's a lot of work, so you can choose to do that. You can choose to do any level of a development. Find someone, task someone, but just understand it takes work, it takes materials, and it takes a plan.
But at a minimum, whether we do option 1, 2, or do nothing, I should probably meet with the people who were interviewed. Correct?
Yes.
That should be my priority between now and the next 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, no matter what, so here's what I would suggest, Jonas. You and I, right after Thanksgiving, let's write a one-page executive summary
Okay,
of the results. And you go to those people and say, here's what I want to share with you.
got it. I think the board has what we can handle for tonight. Are you able to send this presentation so that I can forward it on to the board?
Yeah, I'll send you this presentation, and then if anybody has questions, you can email it to me, and I'm happy to jump on a call or send it back via email.
Maybe before he jumps off, one question.
Yep.
What about
One question.
The foundation grant opportunities, how does that play all into it too? And like, our chances of getting that, it looks like there's a lot of.
Joe's asking about the foundation grant opportunities, and you've indicated that you can help us write some of those grants and some of those pieces. I guess you're talking about the local ones or the national ones?
Well, there's multiple referenced here. I mean, the 39 million grants to charter schools in Minnesota since 2014. I don't know what some of the totals are, but just curious
Yep.
how that could play into it too, is we're not just looking for donors, but is that,
Yeah.
what are our odds
We
of
think
that?
that probably, if we're really gonna be successful at this, that needs to probably be the largest part of where the dollars come from.
Okay.
But there's a feeling that we're more likely to be successful with some of the big national foundations
Right.
than some of the local ones that, as he said, tend to want to give
Yeah.
to poor
Okay.
communities.
The place where we could break in with the locals are the ones that haven't really aligned themselves with certain charter schools and are giving them hundreds of thousands or millions, but believe in the concept of charter schools and are more data-driven. And there are those foundations, particularly, again, on your side of the river, where most of the charter school money is going to North Minneapolis and Phillips. And they're wonderful, they have a purpose, and they are getting millions of dollars from foundations and corporations. And their numbers are not close to what yours are. For whatever reason, right? They're just not.
How often do these foundations kind of say, we'll give you this money, but you have to do this? I don't know, like, are we in a position to where we're willing to change who we are just to get money?
No, don't. So, at my very first meeting, Jonas and Patrick, I don't know if you remember, I said to you, I will not work with not-for-profits that say to me, this guy wants to give us $10 million, but we have to build a computer lab. And we weren't in the business of doing computer training, but we can get $10 million. No. You are who you are, you stay true to your mission, and what they might ask you to do is certain reports. There are certain foundations and individuals that might ask for certain naming rights. We have to be particularly careful with naming rights because you're a charter school. But there are certain things that can be done. But you're not going to become NASCAR and, the kids are going to be walking around with Cargill logos on them. But do not change, do not institute, but you know what? If Cargill comes in and says, we'll give you $1 million and we'd like you to put an aquaponics facility in that we'll pay for, then that's something that the board decides.
Okay, I think we got more than we can handle right now.
You got it.
In terms of it's just too much information for us to digest anymore. Unless there's something really that any board member wants to ask, I think we digest what we got here at that time frame. Thank you, Jason.
All right, thanks
look for your
everyone.
report.
It was a pleasure doing my people love you. If you take one thing from the feasibility study report, is that people love WLO. All right, thanks everyone.
Nuts.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just make a general comment that it seems to me that if we can get a lead gift or two before we do anything, we'd all feel, I think the board, I want to check my read with all of you, you'd all feel more comfortable committing some resources to this if we had a lead gift and we weren't just all putting money out and nothing coming in yet. Is that a fair statement, that maybe should really be our first focus, is to see if we can get one or two significant enough lead gifts where we're feeling more comfortable this is worth the time and what we put into it?
Yeah.
That's how I'm feeling,
Yeah, like I want to see that we have a chance before we.
Yeah,
Commit-
because the
com-
feasibility study is like, it's great, but it's very like theoretical, no
Mhm.
name, like very anonymous. So I think like getting some real numbers, it would definitely be more like, okay, yes.
Yeah, well, and the feasibility study, I think, also ultimately said there's some limitations on what we can do from raising within our community, that we maybe want to do that, but really, if we're gonna reach big and dream big with this stuff, it's really gonna come from foundations or outside big donors, and if we can get one or two to say, then we have confidence that at least, hey, we put more resources into this, the worst that's gonna happen is we've already received more than we're gonna put into it,
Right.
So I just feel like that's kind of where I wanna push Jason, whatever you guys decide about the
Mhm.
annual, or, I mean, he said that he leaned toward the annual when you pushed him, I think that makes sense for the reasons. And I mean, I think there's a piece too where I do think we want to be really deciding a little bit by, let's say, by February, like, do we want to commit what a portion of my time to this? Well, maybe it's not that 50%, but whatever it is, that needs to be factored into what we do for our administrative staffing model for next year. I can't be principal and superintendent and 50% doing, right? And so I don't think we have to rush into this. I think we can see if we can get some lead gifts, and if that makes people feel better. And then, and then decide, is the value of me doing that more than the value of me spending that 50% or
And with the
I
Take
lead-
up some of my
I
time.
would like to see
gift,
some staffing models for the different options.
And like the lead gift, are you thinking one of the big ones or one of the local ones for the start, or just see whatever you can get? Any or
Whatever we can do. We're gonna,
Yeah.
I think there's a few locally that we can try and get to start with. I don't know if we'll get them, but
Yeah.
let's see where those go. And if we're really striking out, then if I was a board member, I'd be a little more hesitant to commit more. If we get it, one or two decent sized gifts, then I think that would make how I feel about, I mean, ultimately you guys decide this, because it's really what you want my job to be and what we want to think and so on and so forth. So, but what I would propose might be different, look, sound, feel different if we're able to do that. And so I think it's my role over the next couple of months is to try and meet with the people that were interviewed, share with them the results, to follow up, to see if we can work with Jason and people to find some places to try and see if we can get at least one lead gift. And then kind of make a decision from there where we're going and what it might look like and how much money we put. I think those pieces of information will be really helpful.
I also want to check back in with you that you're happy doing.
Do you
any
have a lot of
resources?
experience with
No.
fundraising?
No.
Because
that-
I personally, from what I know from you, I feel like you're so valuable in other areas, I wouldn't want to waste your talent, I guess, on fundraising.
Understood. And I thank you for saying that. And part of what, I mean, whatever else you're seeing that you like or don't like with the presentations and everything else, the nice thing about the people, not just Jason, but some people working with them, is these are the experts. They would be coaching me. Believe me, it's not, what I want is our organization to be successful and to dream big. And if that's what I need to do, but it's not like, that's like, have this big desire to go out and spend all these hours and hours and hours being hobnobbing, people I don't know. That's not, but I also, it's an opportunity to talk about our school and be proud of what we do. And I think I would enjoy that part, being able to, I think people don't know about us the way that we should and what we do too. So, I think there's different ways to look at that, and it's a fairer piece. And your question, I think what I said to you last spring, that I can do this for 1 year and it'll be okay, I think that holds. I don't know that 2 years doing it the way I'm doing it right now. I shouldn't say that. I'm fine.
And then would you
I'm-
be happy with the work that you are doing,
I-
regardless of which direction we choose? Would you stay with us?
Yes, I don't think that would impact. I think the piece, and I'm very happy doing what I'm doing right now. I don't think I'm being as good a superintendent as I can be, because too much of my energy is going to be the principal of the high school. And there are parts of my superintendent work where I'm split too much that becomes more reactionary than it was last year. And so I don't necessarily think it's the best thing for the organization for me to be split with this high school thing again next year, but I'm also having a really hard time figuring out with some of the other pieces. One of the things in the superintendent report is it looks like construction won't be done in the addition until November, so 7th grade is going to start at the other building. I'm having a hard time figuring out what is a model that does make sense, that makes sense financially, and fits too. And I haven't come up with anything that I feel good about yet. So that's the other part of it that it has to be fleshed out. And so that's the honest response. I think I'm doing a good job as a high school principal here. And I think I'm doing okay as a superintendent, but I think I did better as a superintendent last year than a lot of years, because when I was focused.
One big thing that makes me nervous about committing to anything is the fact that we are growing so fast. I don't think we can catch up with the things that we need to take care of internally. And so the fact that we have, our growth was so big, and then we purchased this, and now we have construction, and then on top of that, we're gonna run a campaign. It seems too much, and I feel like we haven't ever let the dust settle to have one of the big things even settle and work. And I think we're just trying to do too much all at once. And
Fair.
so like, I can't even say that I even like anything about this campaign right now, because I think we need to focus on what actually is happening at our school. And I think that I can't really get behind it until I can say that our wheels are rolling again.
That's the
as we
perspective
grow.
I'm most interested in too, is what other teachers and how other staff members feel about the rollout of that. Because if the whole school is not supportive of it, it is not gonna be as successful. So I appreciate you saying that, and having your input.
I think we haven't made any decisions, right? The only decision we made was to do a feasibility study, right? And at any point, we can put a pause on things, but I do think we've made I think there's a commitment that I need to follow up with the people that did that. I think, at least at that piece, and then, and maybe there's even a piece where we do the development smaller to start, right? Where I'm not taking that much. Maybe we do hire somebody external to start to build those relationships, and that's a smaller part of my job. And our goals and our things are much, much smaller, and we're just starting to build capacity. I think there's a lot of ways we can look at it, and there's an option to do nothing still, right? I mean, that was one of the 3 options they put on the table. And so, but I at least think before we kind of started saying that's the direction we're going, doing nothing, I think we should have these follow-up conversations. I think we should at least explore a couple of we already are trying to set up meetings and have some things, emails going back and forth to set up a few meetings that could lead to lead gifts. I think we should at least explore those. And maybe we just end up slowing down on the rest of it as we move. I think there's a lot of ways we can think about it. So let's just digest it, think about the positives and negatives, and be strategic, and we don't have to rush. There's no action item here, so we don't really need to do anything. We really are supposed to, though, I told Shelby, because I have an oversight, we are legally supposed to approve the audit report, which was not in our agenda.
It's on there.
Is it on there somewhere?
Oh, maybe. Oops. I thought it was.
We can make it 7.3.2, does that make the most sense to put it with the finances?
You just need to have it in the
Or
minutes somewhere.
in the action items?
You can just put it for action items.
Okay, so I'll just do
9.4.
So shall I make a motion to add as 9.4, approval of the audit presentation?
Second.
Right, there's been a motion and a second to add an item to the agenda, 9.4, approval of the annual audit. Is there any further discussion around that? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to the board report. So we did have a subcommittee that met with the potential parents that were interested in joining the board and filling our open parent seat. We had 5 really phenomenal applicants. The interviews were really great with all 5 of them, and it was a really, really, really hard decision. We slept on it last night, we came together today before the meeting and kind of talked. And like each person has their own strengths and their own skill sets that we think we could use, and we will reach out to everyone and talk to them about committees and possibly joining. What it really just boiled down to for us was we kind of looked at like longevity, families that had more than 1 kid, and then we kind of looked at the board and what our board is lacking. And we were all kind of in agreement that our board is really missing like a financial person. So that kind of narrowed it down to 2 candidates for us, and then we had discussion. But ultimately, our suggestion today is that we offer the parent seat to Justin Coley. He has 3 students with us. He and his wife own a linens business doing like party such stuff. And so he manages the budget, oversees the budget, has a lot of financial knowledge, and that was kind of the big thing that put him first. It was really like, we really had to come down to that. Like there was no like, wow, this, like they were all really, really great candidates. So it was a really tough decision. Ashley, William, Carly, and I were the ones that interviewed, so I'll let them kind of add anything they would like to add.
It was so challenging. I really thought, like, how are we ever gonna decide? So I'm glad we did.
That's a really good problem to have.
It was
Yeah,
a
it
great
is.
problem to have. Several of the parents asked us, like, what's the most challenging thing about the board? That by far was the most challenging thing I've experienced with the board. It was so difficult, but it was so great to see people so, you know, excited about doing stuff for our school.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good experience for me.
Yeah. I think what helped me as far as deciding on who to recommend to the board was our last interview person asked us what we were missing. And it got me thinking, you know, like, we don't really have someone with strong background in finance world. I know Joe works a little in it, but maybe not to.
We're in a bank, but it's all real estate.
Right, so not to what we need necessarily, what, you know, what we experience here month to month, so, yeah, and then just longevity, like, family who's been here for a while, who knows what they're in for, and has decided after that experience that they want to stay.
Yeah, all the above. The questions that we had, really good questions. Frankly, I don't know how I would answer half of those. So the fact that these people we interviewed had good, thoughtful answers said a lot about their candidate quality. So it was a hard decision, but
Yeah, you could have argued any of the candidates.
Really.
Hopefully you can convince some of the other folks to join committees, like you said.
For
if they
sure.
don't
We
come on
definitely
the
looked at
board,
their
That would be
strengths.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just, after the applicants had applied, you know, I wasn't part of the process at all of selecting the person, obviously, but I had seen that they all put a lot of time into the applications.
Mhm.
And I sent them all each just a thank you for taking the time to apply and willing to commit. And I just want to publicly say thank you to each of the candidates too. Just put yourself out there and being willing to serve, and hope that there'll be other ways that they can serve, and hopefully in the future be on the board at a future time.
Sure. Do you guys have any questions about any of the candidates or any of the
And then they will be
process?
seated next meeting?
Month. Yep, so we'll vote on him being set next month, and then we'll have him do the thing. Cassidy will reach out and ask him to complete the prerequisite trainings in order for us to be able to legally seat him. And I'll send an email to all of the applicants, thanking them for their time and letting them know of our decision.
Does the CC in the email when you
Yes,
tell
I
them?
Does the
Yep.
board as a whole need to vote to agree with the recommendation or anything today?
I
I don't
we
think
vote
so.
for the appointment at the next meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
What grades are his children in?
5th, 3rd, and
Oh,
2nd.
okay. She's in the other, she's on the pod. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, right. Should you five?
It's nice to have an older kid too that's gonna be moving into some of these.
Yeah.
That's something we've discussed, I feel like.
And then the other
We
one's
discussed
younger,
that
so I
too.
think it's second.
I saw that when they were doing that, and I was like,
Yeah.
And how long is left in this term? Do we know?
I can find.
No, oh, it's this year would be the first year.
So,
Because
Yeah.
it was the seat
Yeah.
that was filled and then
Yeah,
vacated because,
you're right.
you know, no longer had.
so two more years after this year, the person.
So 2.5.
Yeah.
Good.
That is really all I have for the report.
For me?
You are.
Superintendent report, you know, the only thing that I will say on the first section, around enrollment is we have had some discussions about, when, if we might close enrollment. I know that, you know, I put out there in mid-September, we were about 1,115 students, and we were budgeted for 1,110. And I said, boy, if we can just get a little push here and get up, you know, around 11:30, we could close it and feel confident we're gonna be okay for the year. And kind of put that out in people's heads, and then our own went the opposite direction. And we got down around 1,100. And so it's pretty hard to close it when we're, you know, I think our overall ADM right now is about 1102, 1103, and our budget's 1110. And we really don't want to risk not meeting our covenants the first year in this deal. We might need to not meet it next year or the year after. 1 year is no big deal, but 2 years starts to be a little bit. So I'm just really hesitant to do it too early and risk that all of a sudden, I mean, we gradually lose students throughout the year, every school does. And if you're not replacing, I'm afraid that we get down to 1090 and, you know, and that's $10,000 a student. And so at the same time, I do think our systems are very close to at capacity with the staffing we have, with the facility we have before we build this out, with the number of buses we have. And one of the things I talked about and wanting to get there earlier in the year it's just, it can be very disruptive to learning communities and building this community, and then, you know, you add a new student in, and then you add another student in, and it changes the whole dynamics. And it's better to be there than to be adding, you know, regardless of numbers. So I'm not at a place where I feel comfortable recommending that we close enrollment, but watching it closely, maybe in December, more likely in January, but of course, if we go the opposite direction, if all of a sudden we lose a bunch of students, that could change. So I just think we need to watch it and see, but I'm not there yet.
Are there certain grades that we've?
I was gonna say, in the past, I feel like we've closed, in the past, if we closed enrollment just for specific grades.
Yeah, there was one year we closed it for middle school.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the grades that are full, that we're closed. I mean,
Yeah.
if we're over our target enrollment, we're already closed. So we're not taking any new students at this point. We're full in kindergarten, second, third,
Third.
7, 8. I mean, really the only grades that we're taking new students right now are 1, 4, 5, and 6. Right? And we're not really getting 9, 10, so it's not really an issue at this point. So it's those really are the grades, it's 1, 4, 5, 6 that, and some of them are close, you know.
The way Kathy always explained it, the benefit of closing the enrollment for even just a chunk would be like, let's say one of these 8th graders drops, we don't replace them. Like if we close enrollment for
Right.
our upper school,
Right.
if one of these kids drops, we don't have to legally replace them then.
Right.
Whereas if we leave it open and one of these kids drops, then we have to fill it.
Right.
So I don't know, like community culture wise, high school especially with trying to grow a program, like just a suggestion, if you were to close 7-10, it wouldn't have a ton of impact because there's only one group that's not already full.
Right.
Does that
and we have
outweigh the benefit of like preserving what you're building in this space versus a December 9th grade transfer in or 8th grade transfer in?
And I think
So,
that,
just food for thought.
and I think that tipping point depends on the overall picture of everything else.
Mm.
And if it's putting us in danger of not making our covenants, then yeah, it's worth adding a student.
Yeah.
If we get to a place where I'm comfortable that we're gonna make our covenants, even if we close enrollment, that's when we can close it.
Okay.
That's my thinking right now. But there is a piece, and, you know, it does happen where you add a student or two, and it changes dynamics. And so I wanna close it as soon as we can, with feeling reasonably comfortable that it's not gonna tip us to not meeting our covenants. And I'm just not at the point where I can say that in my mind yet. And I think what we'd be saying is, hey, there's a chance we might not make our covenants. Probably we can, you know, say to our investors, like, hey, it's a lot of growth at once, we're figuring it out. But then, and then probably it's not that big a deal. It's not a good look your first year. But now if next year, you know, with some of the changes in our community, we don't get quite what we think and we have to not meet our covenants 2 years in a row. Now they're getting a little nervous and they're thinking maybe they need to appoint somebody to, you know, oversee our finances and advise us in ways that we'd rather not have it happen.
So what do we need to stay above to meet the covenants?
Well, we're budgeted on 1110. I think we have enough enough cushion in our budget where if we're over 1,100 students average for the year, we'll be okay. Right, that's where I feel okay. But I can't say that if we close it right now, we'll be over 1,100 students average for the year. Right, I think we're at average of 1102 up until now. Right, and this is what we lose. So, but also you close it in January, even if we're in the same place, now you're only having, you know, if you drop to 1095, it's only for half the year in terms of the average. And so that's where I just, if we get a little bit more of a bump, and it looks like we have a little bump to start next trimester, if we kind of maintain that and don't lose kids, and we're up back to 1110, 1112, 1115, we could close it in December possibly, we could be at that point. But, you know, if we drop down and we're back down around 1100 in December, I'm not gonna be there yet. So I just think we need to watch it in terms of what I feel comfortable with. The board can, I mean, the board's like, we just think it's really important, and if we don't make your covenants, we don't close it. I mean, you can make that decision. But that wouldn't be my recommendation yet. Does that make sense?
The only drawback I see of leaving it open would be the pressure that you put on teachers to get them caught up to pass state tests. So like it becomes our backs that we carry these students that weren't our students to begin with. So the further we get away from it, the harder it is for us to get these students caught up. So that would be the drawback of having it open for a longer
Definitely.
period of time, is that it puts a lot of pressure on teachers that might already feel very pressured because of the growth.
I agree with you, and that's why I want to close this as soon as we feel comfortable that we hit that number. But another piece too, teachers will feel that pressure even if it's not there, because our teachers are great teachers and care about kids and want to succeed. But students that enroll after December 15th don't count in our state testing, right? But nonetheless, concept, I understand what you're saying. And anyways, think about that, and we'll see where we're at. And I think it maybe can be a serious discussion in December. And if things go up, I might even recommend, and you may decide your tipping point's a little different than where mine is, in terms of what we feel if we want to do. Because it is it is something that, like, Patrick as elementary principal and I go back and forth about, and talk to the teachers, and you hear some of the stress the teachers feel when a new student comes in, and it makes you feel like you want to close it, and then you're like, okay, but if we do, it's just.
And I would add, since you said my name,
Yeah.
I would add, the other thing I want everybody to consider is playing the long game too. So if you're adding students in December that disrupt the culture of what we have going on, because the December move is usually a traumatic move to move a child mid-year, how will that then impact our retention of students the following year? If we're going to play the long game, we really then might have to go a little bit lower in order to one small step back to take four forward.
Yeah, and I can be swayed that way too. I think the piece that I would say too is, like, I would hope board would say, Jones, like if we somehow miss our covenants because it drops more than we're thinking, we're not gonna hold you responsible for, you know,
Yeah.
for being financially, you know, not hitting the financial marks, because we made, you know, and you give me a little grace to say that that's how you're feeling, I might feel more comfortable too, if that makes sense, that we could have made the covenants if we didn't, if we had, you know, so, just mull that over. I don't think closing it today is what we should do, for sure. I think more realistic in December, which is 3 more weeks of school,
Yep.
to seriously consider it. And see what happens. Cool?
Yep.
Okay, I did something different with the rest of the superintendent report, just because I didn't want to have another presentation, and I felt like a lot of what I've been doing and want to report out to you has been around following up on the presentation I did in September, with the 6 big decisions we have to make, and some of them have kind of resolved themselves where we don't have a choice about them, right? And so they're maybe not going to even be board decisions. Some of them still are, I think. But just real quickly, based on the fact that the building's not going to be done until, the addition's not going to be done until November, it sounds like, or December, 7th grade needs to stay over there next year. But the way the enrollment things are playing, at least to start with, we're planning on having K-6 be there at 7-12 here. It seems to be what most people seem to want, talking to parents. It seems like it's going to fit best numbers-wise, I mean, structure-wise, other than, the only place the other one seemed like it may make more sense is like being able to split up your administrative team, elementary, middle, second, you know, high school. Because there really are people that are great high school people that aren't great middle school people, and great middle school people that aren't great high school people in their roles. And so there's some disadvantage to having it combined that way and that way. But other than that, and every other way, it seems like right now it makes the most sense to be structured that way. Planning to proceed unless there's some big pushback on the board with that, and you know, revisit as we go if there's things in the way the enrollment plays out that makes us think it would fit better the other way over time. Okay, the lot 3 really became something we didn't have a whole lot of choice about, because in order to do the construction we're doing here, we needed more parking. And so we had to put parking across the street. And so that made it less of a decision when there's really no, you know, this plan's been submitted to the city. But the big thing with this is just, I want to get smaller. It's not big like that in my screen. Oh, because you're doing it.
Long day.
Well, I was like, what is going on? You're not doing this? But actually, so yeah, really it's just filling that soccer field in, making it better. The parking.
Middle school or high school size?
It's middle school. We can't fit high school size.
Okay.
Length we can, width we can't. Unless we spent like hundreds of thousands of dollars or something to try and fill in the swamp, like, it's just not wide enough. And even this will be tight with, like, spectators are still gonna have to be on the ends, not on the sides, really. Teams can be on the sides, but to fit a regular middle school one. But then you got your parking. That building in the front right is just a dream to have, we're leaving that space green for down the road. There's no money for that in the plan. But then you can see a current building, you can see the addition. The other just big thing is the gray rectangle at the bottom by building A. That's where we're gonna put playground equipment in. Closer to building A, where kids aren't having to walk across the street. And we've heard a lot from kindergarten, first, second grade teachers, like taking kids that have bathroom emergencies at that age and all kinds of reasons. It just makes more sense anyways, and we need to have the parking across the street. We could have fit both across the street, the playground and parking, but it just kind of
Thank you.
makes sense that way.
I feel like that's important.
Good. All right, so that's that. So lot 3, that's part of the construction plan we submitted to the city.
Although, question.
Yep.
What I remember from the playground equipment that's on reserve for us is it's more of a square looking area than this rectangle? Is it still gonna work? They'll
We,
figure it
we
out,
have,
whatever?
we haven't paid for it. We
Oh,
can
okay.
use part of it, not all of it.
They're gonna
We can do
buy
something to
some? Okay,
So,
awesome.
we'll be okay there. We talked tonight about the third thing, what are we gonna do with development, that's, we're thinking about it. The fourth question is if and when we might move to tiered start times for lower school and upper school. I did do some significant research on this, working with Monarch and playing this out, in the last 3 weeks or so. And, because the big thing was there was kind of an assumption I had that I wanted to check that really kind of played out about how I thought. And that is taking the number of students we have, adding, another 100 into the mix, trying to keep the route lengths the same way they are this year, which is finally seems to be reasonable after the first 2 weeks of school for families. We would need to go to separate start times to have 4 additional buses. So I thought it could have been worse. 4 was what I was kind of hoping for, but it's still, you're talking, right now they're $67,000 a bus. That will go up a little bit each year, and so you're still talking in a couple of years, $300,000 difference. That's 4 teachers. That's, which is a reason to hold off if you can. We also determined that, in order to keep the lower school start times where it is now, if that's what we wanted, the upper school start time would need to be 7:45 in order for the buses to have time to drop off, get to the next routes, complete the routes, and get back here in the time it is now. So you'd be looking at something like a 7:45 to 2:25 start for upper school, if we're keeping the lower school times the same. And so now at least we have that information to think about. The 2 reasons not to do it, that I think I mentioned in September. 1, the cost. 2, the families that have some kids in elementary and some in upper. It's a lot better for them and more convenient to have one start and end time. On the flip side, reasons to do it, there's the whole piece about having 18-year-olds in the bus with 5-year-olds, which right now isn't as big a deal right now because our 9, 10, 11, well, it's so small that with 18 buses, you have an average of 1 or 2 kids that age on a bus. But as we double in size and all of a sudden you're looking at 6, 7, 8 kids that age, it starts to feel different, I think.
But it's even still the middle schoolers that are with the littles. Like, those littles are hearing very colorful language.
Yes. More than they should now,
Yeah.
even with the 6th and 7th graders.
Yeah.
Right. And so, agreed. And
But
it's
I
less.
do wonder how many families they would feel, they send their kids to our school specifically for the same start time for their students. I wonder how many families that impacts.
Yeah.
Because it does seem convenient that way. It does seem like maybe I would choose a school if it worked best for my family, where I can send all my kids to the same school at the same time, they all get home at the same time,
Well, and
So
that seems to me, in fairness, if we're thinking about doing this in a couple years, in 2 years or 3 years, we should start letting families kind of know that now, so it's not out of the blue and a bait and switch for them.
Sure.
So even though this isn't something I'm recommending doing for next year, that we
Okay.
maybe consider for the year after, or even the year after that,
Okay.
maybe we should think about at some point this year saying this is our intention as a board to do at this date or later, so that it doesn't end up being a bait and switch on people and,
Right.
and how they feel.
Or we can solicit feedback,
We
if it
can.
would be a deal breaker
Yeah.
for people or not.
We can. I do think there's gonna be whatever, I think there may be some flexibility in when the timing is. I don't know that at our full capacity here, we have a choice. Like in terms of the traffic, the parking lot, the whole systems, having the use of the gyms. One of the advantages of having the high school start earlier is you can have 4 gym classes take place for upper school before elementary ever starts. We don't have enough gym space for all our classes. In theory, there's 2 gyms side by side. So you have one class that is 7:45 to 8:15, and another one that's,
Oh, sections, got it.
yeah, 4 sections, yeah.
I was trying to think of 4 places simultaneously, got it.
Right. So in 2 windows, that could really get you here. Like, I don't know how we're gonna get our kids that are required to have Phi-Ed through Phi-Ed, much less the amount we'd want them to have. I think that there's a lot of pieces with the extracurriculars and our upper school kids, high school kids that wanna work, where a 3:50 end time just,
Right.
a lot of times takes them out of being able to have a job, makes a lot of extracurricular things that happen at those ages really hard. I don't really think I think we have a choice for how long we hold off, but I think we're gonna have to do it at some point, is kind of my take on it.
Do we know if there are any structured schools like us that have the K-12 that do have staggered starts and it works fine?
I'll research it.
Yeah.
Not research
I-
that.
I wonder if that would be, getting, not we don't need to solicit their opinion on it, but like, is this something that's fairly typical? This is kind of a movement in a typical direction.
It's a fair question for charter schools that are K-12 like ours. I hadn't thought about it in those terms, because I was thinking about it all along in my head well, this is what all the traditional school districts have separate times, and
Right.
it's not like they could choose to
Right.
have this
Right.
at their other choices, the schools close. But it might be a tipping point where some do choose. But at worst case scenario, it's not like, well, if they don't do this here, they can go next door and do someplace that does have all the same. I don't think that there's any places close, but I'll research that, something I hadn't thought of, as I should. So, but that's there. I do think that we should, at some point before the end of this school year at least, kind of come up with even if we say it's our tentative timeline, just so that we're being transparent and not last minuting people if it is the year after next. That makes sense, that we're planning to do this at some point. It could be as early, even if the statement we put out is it could be as early as
Sure.
27, 28, or, when we.
I would be
hold up.
okay with verbiage like that. I'd hesitate to put a date on it, and we don't see exactly where our growth ends up and how
Yeah.
much of our upper
Right.
school chooses to do, how much PSEO,
Agreed.
whatever. So,
Agreed.
yeah, vague and
Yeah.
non-committal sounds
Agreed,
great.
but at least putting it so that we're not blindsiding people.
Yep.
The whole if and when we move transportation in-house thing, I've done no more research on that than I had before, so I don't have really an update in that. I still think it's something that, as we keep growing and getting bigger and bigger, the more savings that become involved with doing it eventually, but it's a lot, so, but it's also a lot of money, potentially, and a lot else we could do, so we gotta look at it from both sides of that. And so I just think it's something we wanna keep on our radar, particularly to protect ourselves from the rapid rise in costs that happened, like during COVID, where all of a sudden it went from, in a few years, $200 a bus to $400 a bus. And it doubled, like, at least if you built doing a little bit of it internally, and you start to build some capacity, or one of the companies, decides to go, that we're serving, and all of a sudden does a contract with the big school district and doesn't have capacity for us anymore, and now we're scrambling. We really are kind of at their mercy when there's only a couple companies in the area right here. And so I think even just as a safeguard, we should at least be thinking in the next few years of doing a couple buses ourselves or something to just start to build a little bit of capacity. But I don't feel ready to add that to our plate, as you're saying, with all the things we have.
Right.
But I do think would be some wiseness in at least doing that in the not too distant future, because it is a potential unpredictable thing that can really throw a wrench in everything. So, and then I threw the class size thing out there, and I don't see us being any time in the near future needing to look at that. This is a big advantage of what we have, but I do think there's worth over time doing a little research and just thinking about if things don't go as planned, what are tipping points and what are, you know, what are protections and so on and so forth. I did do presentation for the fifth grade families last night. I had about 40 families about middle school and high school as we're considering. And part of that, I did some research about what the class sizes were at the middle schools and high schools around us. And, you know, in South Washington County, middle school classes 34 is kind of the average. High school classes of 36 and up to 40 is, 36 is an average and up to 40. And so if you talk about, hey, if all of a sudden we're missing some targets financially going from 24 to 25 in our upper grades, maybe that's not the end of the, you know, maybe that one student difference, you know, to add, you know, I mean, I'm not saying we should do that. I'm saying that's something we should keep in our back pocket for a rainy day if we need it, but also just have in our back pocket, like, what is our tipping point and what are we willing to sacrifice if it ever came to that, to not have to do, even have one student or, it's
Well, I'm
just.
glad you did preface middle school and high school. Just thinking about the smaller class size, the physical room themselves are smaller on the elementary side and the younger side, that we physically
In the first two
cannot.
floors.
We physically cannot fit any more students in our classrooms without big behavior problems, and that's something that you said last year to me, is that we have to, like, you are gonna have behavior problems. If we fit more students in here, then the room can hold.
In a building, first and second floor.
Correct.
I 100% agree that we should never go above 22 in those two floors, in those size classrooms.
Right.
Yeah, that would be, size of the classroom matters as much to what is, you know, how things are. The rooms, I think, are bigger on the third floor, and they're definitely bigger in the B wing. Where the classes of 24 or 25 there, I feel like are a little more reasonable.
And I think when I was on third floor, I had a class of 24, but I didn't necessarily feel that because my classroom was humongous. I had the penthouse, and I could fit 24 very comfortably with any configuration I wanted to, with having a comfortable teaching space in the front and the back, and the classroom that I'm in right now, 23 were on top of each other, and I can't spread them out enough to have them even comfortable. So I'm very limited, so even adding one more student to be at 24, I don't know that I could handle it.
No, all I'm talking about here is keeping in our back pocket
Yeah.
and being prepared that, hey, if we're talking about making cuts of things or adding one student at some point down the road, where's our, you know, which, as long as we hit our enrollment target, we're never talking about in the next several years, right? It's more a matter of protection against if we don't hit our enrollment targets and all of a sudden, you know, numbers aren't adding up, and where do we go, and do we cut other things, or do we add up one or two, you know, where's the point where it doesn't feel small anymore, where it doesn't feel like the big difference we need between the other ones? And I think you're there in the classrooms on first and second floor, for sure. I think, you know, maybe one more student on the third floor, and other wing in terms of the size of the classrooms are over here, you know, might be, I mean, for sure, when you're talking high school and you're talking 36 elsewhere, if we were 26 here I don't think that would be a
Right.
big deal. You know, I think we'd still be really, really small, right?
Right.
And we might just need to consider that down the road when we
Yeah.
have multiple classes and some go to PSEO and
Yep.
some are still here and it's not enough for two classes, but yeah.
I don't think it's a big decision, I just think it's something to have on our radar and be aware when we talk about if things don't go to plan, or we're taking a little bit of risks on things, that something that we could have in reserve that could be, you know, I mean, every student is $10,000, so you can, you know, you have 60 classrooms and you have one per classroom, you got $500,000 that, you know, as a way to deal with it if you had to. And so I'm just putting it there. I'm not advocating for adding students now or next year or anytime in the future. I just think the more we're thinking ahead and being prepared and you know, class sizes is a huge value of WLA that is completely shared, and everything we just said. So that's it. We can move on. Unless there's questions. It's only been an hour and a half, not that bad.
All right, Colleen.
Okay, cool.
Finance Committee meeting met on the 12th of November, and we focused on the financial status and some budget adjustments that we needed to figure out. As of that day, there was 1101 students, and we were projected to maintain 61 days of cash on hand. That's above the 45 days that's required. There were no concerns with revenues, and expenses were tracking well as Jonas and Dustin met to correct the coding changes on the financial statements that were misclassified. Now everything is accurate, everything's tracking. Some of those that I noticed were some field trip travel was misaligned. There's also some instructional materials.
It's recorded. All right. I will share my. That's my fifth grade presentation. Sure, fifth graders.
So as of right now, everything's accurate. And those things weren't affecting our overall budget, it was just how everything was placed on our budget.
Yeah, I think the way I just read it, it's not that anybody coded anything wrong.
Right.
There
Yeah.
are a number of items that could be coded any one of places that kind of fit in either one. And where it gets messed up, and neither one's really wrong, like some schools will code it in one and some will code it in the other. The problem is if it's not coded where we had it when we made our budget, it makes that line look off, even though the overall thing isn't. And that was what we were really having a lot last month, is there were lines where things were in a place that you could say it fit in that budget line, but it's not where we had put it last year and not where we were thinking it would go when we made the budget. And so that was why some of those lines looked off last month, even though the bottom line number was fine. And so we tweaked those. I don't know if we'd say miscoded as much as, well, maybe they were miscoded. You get what I'm saying.
You're putting your eggs in the wrong basket.
In terms of where we were planning. And so, and we just didn't have a time to fix that last month like we usually do because Dustin got sick before the meeting, we couldn't fix it. So that's all.
The second important thing we talked about was this new experience for all Minnesota employers. It's the new Family Medical Leave Act that's starting to take effect January 1st. And our employees met on November 14th at our Friday morning meeting. We were presented with that information, and we all had to sign off on that. WLA has decided to absorb all of the costs for the employees for the rest of our school year. And then in the future, our board is going to be talking about the future plans of covering the 0.88% of employees' paycheck and figure out how we can do that next school year.
Can I ask a question about our coverage right now? Because most teachers, most full-time employees already had short-term and long-term disability. Maybe there were some other employees that didn't, and now everybody is covered.
Everybody.
Correct?
Yeah.
So now we're covered double. Is that also correct? Like we're covered,
The new Family Medical Leave Act covers more than your short-term disability and long-term disability. It covers things that weren't covered.
yeah.
And it pays out at a higher rate than the short-term or long-term.
So I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but
And I don't know the answer to your question. Do you get money from both? If that's where you're
are
going?
we thinking about getting rid of one?
Oh, it's certainly something we can look into. I
wouldn't think so, because short-term and long-term disability provide coverage for things like broken legs, ACL surgeries, like that kind of stuff, that the family and medical leave is more so just for like maternity, isn't it?
Okay.
Well, for your broken leg too, it's medical leave.
Before
Before
you
yeah.
get short-term disability for pregnancies.
Yeah, I mean, it is a good wondering, like, do we even need?
Because
Well-
like I mean, I would rather not have the school have to pay for both if we
Right.
don't need them,
Yeah.
or the employee to have to pay for both if
Right.
we don't need it, especially if you don't use it.
I'm pretty sure they dropped short-term.
Yours did?
I'm pretty sure.
I
I'll
think
have to
that a
double
lot
check.
of larger companies are dropping it because they're not gonna pay for both.
Okay, that's something to definitely research. Yeah, it makes sense.
That's what
Yeah.
I've heard as well.
But people are dropping short-term?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll find out. I don't know that we could drop it.
You might not be able
In
to
the
because
middle of
we've
the year.
committed
Yeah.
to the
I
whole
would
thing.
Right.
So
see
this,
that next year.
this like 6-month period or whatever.
Well, I
you
think
have
we're
to
actually
commit to.
committed through December 2026. Because we did it, at least for sure for our health insurance we are. I'm not sure if it's for everything bundled. because we got a better rate by doing a 16-month and changing to the middle year. But makes sense. And I've mentioned it before, what we're saying here, the cost of the, at least right now to start with, that's being charged for the new FMLA, which is a big benefit for employees, right, is a little bit less than 1% of salary, so 0.88, a little less than 1%. The employers are required to cover at least half of that. And so most places will have, the employers will cover half. The employees will cover the other half, because, you know, employers are generally not gonna take on more of it than they need to. But when we had to figure this out, as I told you, it was kind of between board meetings, I didn't even know about it, and we had to do it, and so it was like, okay, we got with a $40,000 cost, that's not in our budget, are we gonna absorb all of it or not? And didn't feel like I could say that we would charge the employees for it without having the board approve that. And didn't feel like it was fair to employees to have their paychecks essentially go down in the middle of the year. Where at least if we do the whole thing next year, employees are already getting a significant raise to start next year. And so the $10 or $12 a month or whatever it might be, you know, they'll still be getting a raise when that starts taking effect if we do decide to do that. So, so it'll be a discussion for later in the year when we do our whole budget.
When-ish do we have to know if we'll pass on to employees?
Well, we've committed that through this school.
For next academic year, when do we
By
have
the
to know
time we
by?
set payroll in September, August. Well, I'd say by the time we start, because some employees start July 1st on their payroll, so I'd say we would need to do it by May or so.
By May. So we have time to maybe
Usually.
see what other locals
Yeah.
and other charter schools are doing.
For sure. Yep.
Or even businesses for that matter, because I don't think that this is this is just everybody.
Yep.
I'm thinking where else you might choose to work if we
Oh.
do different things
And they're doing, right.
other than,
Yep.
just similar for
Yep.
your positions, so we're not way out of whack. And,
Yeah.
Yep.
I get what you're
you know,
saying.
so we're being
Yep.
fair to you all.
Yep, totally agree. Yep, good.
And to
Awesome.
finish up, we're gonna have our December meeting on the 10th, virtually, if anybody wants to be included on that.
They're a lot of fun.
Very exciting.
The meeting was short. I was impressed. Half an hour.
Yeah.
They usually are.
Mhm.
Much shorter
Dustin and
than
Jonas are
others.
very good at
Yep.
explaining.
Yes. Mhm.
Including I listen.
Absorb and learn.
Yep.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the October financials and November committee minutes.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Moving over to Joe.
Yeah, so governance minute, Thursday, November 13th, and we talked about policy 515, and we decided to sort of table that. Jonas was gonna take the White Bear Lake policy, because as a model, and maybe create a new one, make sure we comply with the changes that were made to the Minnesota statutes, and I could bring that back maybe December, maybe January for governance. Then we a little race to have some, possibly January, especially with the holidays and all that. So, policy 525 we looked at. We made some revisions, which was entered in for the first reading for the board meeting. Policy 531. We took a look at that to figure out if it was out of compliance, and we all reviewed it, and actually, you know, we were good, and we made no changes to 531. And then policy 516, there were some minor revisions. Those were the changes we had made originally, so that's being submitted to the board for the final reading. Same with policy 521, that's being submitted for final reading. So those comments there were from the first, before the first reading, that was what we had made for changes. Governance took a look at it again, we didn't make any recommendations, so it's just back for the final reading. And then we discussed having maybe a future governance meeting to determine kind of a best schedule with policy reviews going forward, maybe to switch it up. Think about it as the way we're doing it the right way, or do we want to do it differently? Maybe even have a schedule to, everybody can be a little bit more involved with that, with what's coming up, especially some you have to review annually to make sure we're following that. So we were talking about maybe doing that in one of our upcoming meetings as well. We did move back the journalism and the library policy for now for future discussions. For example, library policy, that has to do with having a media specialist, and we just don't have anybody that can do that right now, so we're just gonna have to kind of table that for now. Does anybody have any questions or?
Yeah, why is journalism also tabled?
We don't have a journalism class right now.
Yeah.
It's not a
So
class.
it only
that's-
applies to a journalism class, not
Well,
just
if-
like writing in their core classes?
It would have to be anything that you would publish in even internally, or it wouldn't have to be a journalism class. You could have a school newsletter, newspaper, or whatever. Well, we could just adopt a model policy. But,
We felt like there wasn't anybody that's publishing anything by students. We're not having students write any newspapers or write any magazines or anything like that that's published for the school to use. And then there will be a class Jonas mentioned that will be a student journalism class that we're gonna have to have the students do. And then once that happens, then we need to have this policy. So that was,
Got it.
that was
Got it.
kind of the leading on that, is it wasn't necessary for right now because we didn't have those things in play.
Not getting rid of it, just moving it down the list.
Because it kept popping
Yeah.
up on our list and we aren't doing
Yeah.
anything with it, so.
We just kept revisiting.
It's so hard to know. Usually when you're reviewing the policies, you're thinking, you're looking at what you have and you're saying, right now, the process is, we look at the policy and say, are we doing what the policy says? Are we complying with the policy? And then we're saying, is there anything in it that we think needs to change for what we want to do or should be doing? And I think we're just having a hard time looking at that policy and being able to anticipate. I mean, we probably just adopted it as the model is, and then so you have something in place, and then, once we actually start things and have some issues, and bring it back, I suppose. But it's just I think it's hard to think about when you haven't had any of those situations come up, and you haven't, it's been 12 years since I've been in a school that had any journalism
That's
happening.
fine, I just thought it was something that we had to have, that the law was saying that you need this. I didn't realize it
Well,
was
so that-
only if
Well,
X, Y, Z.
it may not be, but that's also the discussion we had about having a meeting in December or January to really look at our policies, and kind of the thought being that I was gonna ask Cassidy, and I hadn't thought of it until we were sitting here. Do we have any type of spreadsheet that has like a list of our policies and when they were last reviewed and adopted, or is it just kind of what's on the website? We have to go through them one by one right now.
I thought, was there one in the governance drive or no?
I could double check. I don't know. Rich never said there. I didn't see one, but I'll poke around there a little further. and see if there
The
is.
thought is we should if we don't have that, maybe take a meeting where we actually have kind of created that and see when each of the policies was last reviewed, but then also look at the statutes related to each policy to see how often they're required to be reviewed and if they're required by law, and have that all in the spreadsheet so we're not trying to be reactive like that. And that was what I had suggested, like,
Yeah.
maybe right now we're just kind of going through them in numerical order, and we don't necessarily know for sure, are these ones that we're reviewing now the ones that's been the longest time since they were reviewed, and so that was a thought. And so thinking being that the answer to those questions will come out when we make that spreadsheet.
Sounds great.
I feel like at one point, and maybe I did this for the school I work at and not this school, but I feel like we had a spreadsheet that said, like I created a spreadsheet that talked about like which ones were required annual, which ones were not required at all, but that we had, and I don't remember if that was here or there. So,
But if
I
we
feel
don't,
like that spreadsheet,
if we don't,
if it doesn't exist, I'll share the one I created.
that'd be great, right? Because then that would be a column in that
Yeah.
spreadsheet is how often is it maybe there's one that's required yes, no, and then
Yeah.
We
if
would
the
have to
answer is
look at
yes.
that information.
Yeah,
Yeah.
instead of trying to, I mean, there's just too many here to,
Yeah.
when I scroll, you forget, you start
Right.
looking through them one at a time, you forget what was where before, and
Yeah.
so.
I do have a question on 525, like the reasoning behind removing all of the curriculum stuff that was in there. Do we not have a curriculum, or did we just feel that it didn't need to be in this policy?
I remember it was my suggestion, but I don't remember what it was, I guess.
I think you had said that sometimes, like it's, if it's saying that we need to have a curriculum, but there is no curriculum, are we gonna have to develop a curriculum?
Mhm.
So
So-
the point being that, like, we talked about going through it, all the things, and just, we don't necessarily have a curriculum that does each of these things right now.
Mhm.
And we are teaching them all in different places in different ways, but don't necessarily have a curriculum, so if we're gonna do that, we're not necessarily in compliance. And it seemed just limiting, like, with all the other bullet points seem to cover the purpose and the prevention strategies that you're doing in those things without having it being so, yeah, and restrictive, like, or laid out, is kind of the thought. I mean, it'd be great to have curriculum for all those things, but we don't necessarily have time of the day to teach them either. You have to take something else out of our curriculum to teach all those
Right.
things, and a lot of these things are things that we're trying to do within morning meeting or within different aspects that aren't necessarily within a curriculum, but they're being covered. That was kind of the thinking, was the least restrictive that still meets the purpose is what we wanted.
Yep.
I think I don't remember if it was Sabres or not, but Sabres has a curriculum that talks, I think it's Sabres that has a curriculum that talks about like the SEL stuff. But I think you'd also have to purchase that. So we give the Sabres, kind of, survey to see how students are doing with social emotional learning in the classroom. But I don't know that we've purchased the curriculum to go through the social emotional curriculum that they provide. So we don't necessarily have an SEL curriculum per se. We're just,
But each of these things really are somewhere in our curriculum, they're just not within one established one.
Exactly.
I mean, developing
Exactly.
curriculum that teaches critical viewing and listening skills and analyzing math, we have that within our curriculum. We don't have a specific curriculum that hits all of those things in different places. Instead of saying that we have like one curriculum that hits it all,
exactly.
it just that implies you have this all in one place.
Mhm.
And I think leadership probably covered a lot of this, and now we don't have leadership. It's within our,
I will say that we will need to add one elementary specialist next year. And,
I agree.
What did you
and
say?
Media.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot, the hard part about media is we need to add a specialist that teaches 6 classes. And there's a thought that if you have a media specialist, that they're gonna do everything managing the library, and it's almost impossible to do that in 6 classes. So it gets a little tricky that way.
I don't
Like
have to do
that-
everything, they just have to be the ones who manage it if people complain and want books removed.
A thought
That's
is
also
that
true.
putting back, could we hire a para that would support the media and a classroom part-time?
Potentially, if you hire a specialist that's the media specialist, potentially, or at least part of the time doing that. That's
Yeah.
possible. There's lots of ways we can look at it.
Because the media specialist wouldn't have time to shelf books, is the concern.
I will say that my hesitation on that is anecdotal and personal experience, but a fair amount of anecdotal evidence between myself and others and is that a lot of people that are choosing to be in those media specialist roles really want to be the technology and managing the media. They don't really want to be teaching 6 classes, and they end up not being particularly good at it.
Mhm.
It's not really why they're going into that role. That's what they're being forced into to cover preps right now. And it seems to me like the right time to add that is when we need half of a person, instead of when we need a whole person. When you have somebody who could teach 3 classes and manage the library, the other 3 or something. And that's just the wondering. Not saying that person doesn't exist out there. We did interview where we had some different possibilities last year, and we interviewed, we didn't feel like were the right fit, and that's where when we ended up deciding to do doubling up on both the music and the art instead of going a different direction. Was really part of the driver of that was wanting to get extracurriculars started in music and choir and, you know, some of those pieces that the music teachers could do. And part of it was just not feeling like we found the right person to do both those pieces. We found somebody who would be good at managing the library part of it and maybe helping integrate technology into classrooms, but didn't feel like it was going to be really successful with that person teaching the classes. And that really
Did those who you interviewed indicate that they were not interested in teaching so much as managing the library?
We're not going to say that when they know that's what the job is, but that was our evaluation. And I'm not saying the person doesn't exist, and we can try, right? But I'm just saying that's why we didn't. Is that one thing I know from working elementaries long enough, that when a class goes to the specialist, if it's not good in the specialist, it can throw the whole rest of the day off for that classroom teacher and those kids the rest of the day. If it's bad enough anyways. And it makes a big difference in not just that 45 minutes of the day, but whatever comes after a lot of times. I don't know if you've had that experience, teachers, but I've seen that. And so we feel very fortunate with, we had to hire a number of specialists this year. We've tried to do a little bit more to support and get some stability, but one of the trade-offs we have in prioritizing common prep time for our grade level teachers, which is a very high priority and a big part of our success, but it makes the specialist job much harder, because now they have to teach every grade instead of being able to split between, when you have 2 people, being able to split between grades, and it can make that job, it's the downside, and it's a worthwhile trade-off, but it's part of the challenge why most of the turnover we had last year was in specialists. We didn't have much turnover in our classroom teachers. It was those elementary specialists that those jobs were tough, and we're trying to find ways to support and make them better, and they make a big difference in the whole scheme of things. We're lucky that we got some really good ones like that this year. So sorry to go on a rant, but that's the answer. So I'm not opposed to the concept of being a specialist. I just have reservations and concerns about it. Making sure we have the right person to be there.
Yeah. So are you leaning more toward, sorry, I don't mean to get us in the weeds, but I guess my question is that are we leaning more toward leadership, I guess?
I don't know. I have no idea. Basically, I delegated it to Patrick. I said, Patrick, this is K7.
Yeah.
You work with the team and figure out what you think will make the most sense.
Love it.
So I really kind of took myself out of that discussion at this point, unless there's some direction for the board to put myself back into it. Otherwise, I'm kind of delegated to him. So.
I'll make a motion to approve the October Governance Committee minutes and enter policy 525 into the first reading and enter policies 516 and 521 into the second and final reading.
Second.
Put a motion and a second to accept October Governance Committee minutes, put 525 in the first reading, 516 and 521 in the second reading. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Board Development Committee.
Yeah, we had our first meeting yesterday. Pretty basic stuff because there's still a lot of questions as to what this committee is going to be looking like. But we adopted a charge. You should be able to view it if you click on the link there. Patrick came up with this. It's really boilerplate stuff, and I think it really summarizes everything that we'd kind of hoped a development committee would look like. So if you have any questions or thoughts or additions, we can discuss those. I don't believe we need to approve this necessarily, but I could be wrong.
Now, how has that worked with committees in the past? Does the board kind of, in theory, the board kind of say this is the scope of the committee, and the committee goes and works within that scope? And so we're proposing to the board, do we need to approve this, or?
I think we approved it last month, didn't we? We
The
approved
development of
the
the
develop-
committee.
We're having a development committee, but not what the development committee's
I think similar like
goals.
the facilities committee, we didn't need to approve those.
We didn't, okay, then we don't.
Just the finance, the governance, since those are actual.
legal.
The only other things we discussed, which have been discussed previously, we're gonna meet quarterly, so 4 times a year. And it'd be great to have the new board member, or someone else, join. It'd be great to have someone else on the committee. There's one other thing, Jonas, that I couldn't remember earlier. I don't know if you remember what it was. I hadn't read
There's
it.
the 3 things we were saying for your report, I can't remember
Yeah.
the third one either, but.
Yeah,
When we were gonna meet, what the charge is,
right.
and I
We were
think
other-
we were talking about the how of what we were gonna do. We talked about the spread, creating a spreadsheet with kind of
Okay.
different categories of what things are gonna look like, and
But a lot of this is dependent on what direction we go in February.
with this.
Right.
We
Yeah.
wanted to see what came out of this first before we started getting into the how.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think we need to see where we're at with all of it.
Right,
When we get
yeah.
back to February.
So, nothing to approve necessarily unless anybody has any questions or thoughts.
And Carly did get the superintendent support committee going. We are meeting, our first meeting will be held December 4th, so.
And Carly had a great idea that we did, in fact, when we're meeting, is that opposite months, so.
And also to not start in January, so we're not meeting in July when there's typically board turnover
Yep.
with
So-
after elections.
So like, the development is November, February, May, June, August, right? Those 4 times a year, and then the superintendent committee is the
December, March,
following
June.
month, so, yeah. So we'll have one of those. We have 4 months left.
Alright. Consent agenda items are considered routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member so requests, in which the item will be removed as a consent agenda item and addressed. Consent agenda items are as follows: approval of the October 23rd, 2025 meeting minutes, approve the November personnel update. Cassie, will you do a roll call vote for this?
William Beck,
Aye.
Maddie Knudsen,
Yes.
Khalid Lautenbach,
Yes.
Allison Pitt,
Aye.
Shelby Poole,
Yes.
Ashley Kachasik,
Aye.
Carly Sherrill, Joe Malik.
Aye.
So moved. All right, moving to our action items. We first need to approve the WLA annual report and World's Best Workforce 2024-2025. It's the most exciting thing that you will read. All 782 pages. Anything you want to add about that?
Me?
Yep.
Um,
You wrote it.
Well,
Most of
actually,
it.
I'm responsible for it, but
You're
it was
responsible.
very well divided up.
Good.
Cassidy had her section on enrollment, and Ms. Nave had her section on the academic reports, and I had a few sections, and,
Okay.
but yeah, it's pretty well divided up. And, you know, it really is, each year we just take what it was last year and add the numbers from this year and make the tweaks that make it fit, so, it's a pretty big report, but a lot of it, we're reusing data from previous years, which is what you're supposed to do. I think the main thing is, I don't know, Carly had a question before about one of the data things where we didn't quite make the numbers, and it reminded me that we probably should look a little bit more often at our scorecard from VOA, and particularly new board members that maybe haven't even seen it. So I'm gonna send forward this document to you right now, but what it is VOA has what's called their scorecard, and with, you see that report is set up in different sections with different standards, and we get a score in each of these different standards each year, and since we have a 5-year renewal, at the end of the 5 years, depending on our scores over the 5 years, we get either another 5-year renewal, a 3-year renewal, a 1-year renewal, or they tell us we gotta close, essentially. And what's really nice about the way VOA has it set up is it's very, you can look at the data from each of the years and see where you're at. And so like before this data is in here, the one I'm sending you, the scorecard, is before actually the data for FY25 is in there. It's just from 22, 23, and 24. And so then the last 2 years are 25 and 26. But you need an average rating of, I believe, 80% to get a 5-year renewal. And our average for the first 3 years is 90%. So we'd have to really fall off a cliff like this last year to, to not get a 5-year renewal at this point because of how far above the target we are. And so I'm gonna just forward this to you right now.
We need to grant us access, because I had to request.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay, let me look at that. Okay, I think that's the biggest thing that came out of it for me is, some of those things of, looking at that data, but our data across the board, we don't have any real weak areas right now. We have some that are stronger than others, but there's no area we're really struggling in. And so, yeah, pretty much a formality to meet the legal requirements.
Make a motion to approve the annual report.
Second.
So the motion and a second to approve the annual report in the World's Best Workforce 24-25. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. 9.2 is appoint myself as the school-appointed DPA responsible authority, Nicole Link as the school-appointed DPA designated authority, and Jonas as the school data practices compliance official.
Ask Cassidy what all that means.
Who can sign what, right? It's just like a
Yeah, like Jonas is in
designating who
charge
can
of-
sign.
Yeah.
Is this it is expired and now we need to renew?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, right, it's required by DOA.
It's an annual thing.
yeah.
And again, our site visit when Stephanie was here, she's like, this should set this up differently, and this is how you should do it. So we just I mean, the bottom line is we get so few data practice requests is really, bigger organizations get a lot more, but there was one we got this last month.
Oh.
About
Yeah.
my contract that I sent you, made sure with you, that they requested that information from us, so we had to send it to them.
Mhm.
Do you need a second?
I need a motion.
You need a motion, I'll make a motion to appoint Shelley Poole as the school-appointed DPA responsible authority, Nicole Link as the school-appointed DPA designated authority, and Jonas as the school data practices compliance official.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any further conversation? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Aye. Vote carries. I feel like I should abstain when it's about me. Approve the grade expansion plan, which is basically just stating that we intend to grow in 11th grade next year, 12th grade the following, goes along with what Ben talked about last month.
Having this approved is the last thing the high school league needs for us to
Yeah.
get approval. They need an official approved by the board. Since we don't have 11th and 12th grade yet, saying that we're heading 11th and 12th grade, because you need to be through 12th grade to be part of the high school league.
So I'll read the suggested wording. As part of our strategic plan regarding grade expansion, The Woodbury Leadership Academy School Board formally plans to add 11th grade to our school program for the 26-27 school year and 12th grade to our school program for the 2027-2028 school year.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further conversation? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. That's next.
Okay.
Yep. 9.4 that we added to the agenda would be approving the annual audit presented this evening. So make a motion to approve the annual audit presented today.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further conversation? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Our next board communication, I've already sent the emails to all of the parents that we interviewed, and Cassie will reach out to Justin to get him rolling so we can hopefully seat him in December. Otherwise, our next board meeting will be held here Thursday, December 8th. I shouldn't say here. It will be held somewhere on the WLA grounds, Thursday, December 18th at 5:30 p.m. Make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Oh, sorry, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Why would you ever object to